Hi and welcome to the next video. This is video number 9. So this time we are creating a new to-do item in our Angular front end. For this we are creating a typed reactive form with form controls and handle values, for example, like title or text. But we also have drop downs to handle like the complexity of a task, so that you have a drop down, for example, how hard is the complexity? Is it easy, medium, or even hard? So this form will be displayed also in a dialog, so as an overlay with Angular material. And the structure in this video is as always: first we have a look at the outcome, then we read the user story, and then we implement the story. And so there are timestamps in our description, so you can skip to the parts that you're interested in. So let's have a quick look to the outcome of this video here. So here we can see we have our create to-do item action now. So we have like a new button. And with this button, if I click it, I'm getting here a new or a dialog displayed. I can enter an example title. I can add an example subtitle. I can enter whatever text I want. Or for example, if I leave it here empty, then I get displayed we need a subtitle. So we have to type one. We can choose a complexity of our task, for example, easy, medium, or hard. And we can say where should it be initially, so in the backlog, in the to-do, or in the done. And then we can say we want to create it. And then at the moment we are just printing it here to the console, our object. But in the next videos we could also do some stuff with it, send it to our backend, close the dialog, display it here in the backlog, and so on. But here our form now works and we are doing it all inside a dialog. So let's first read our story. Here we are in video number 9 and we are just creating to-do items with reactive forms and inside a dialog. So here we are just in our Angular front end, and the story is basically what I just said. So we want to create to-do items in a reactive form, and it should be opened in a dialog. And our criteria are: we want to have a reactive form so that we can create to-do items. The output should be logged to the console. So if we click on submit, for example, of the form, and our form should be opened in dialog. So these are our 3 acceptance criteria. So now we are able to start. So the first thing that we can do is in our Angular front end, we have here our private module at the moment with 2 components, our dashboard and our card component, where we just display like a to-do item with a card. So here we need now a new component, for example, a create to-do component, so that we can load this component inside a dialog and then display it to the user. So for this, we can just cd into our folder there and create a component with our Angular CLI. So we can just say cd into our Angular front end. Then source app private components and say ng generate component, and then we just name it create to do. And then this should set up or create a component that's called create to do component for us inside our folder here. So this will maybe take some time because my PC is slow with Docker and OBS running. And now we see it should be created here. Just give it some time to appear. So now you can see it here. Our component here is added to our declaration, so we are referencing it in our private module. And in our components we have our create to do component. So at the moment we just say it works and we have nothing special here. So you can ignore this. This will go away. This is just because my PC is very slow at the moment. But otherwise we have a look at it at the end, but it should go away. So the first thing that we want to do is in our dashboard component, we want to open the create to do component in dialog. So what we can do is we can create like in a met dialog ref with Angular material. So we can say here, for example, create to-do component dialog reference so that we can reference it, and this should be a met dialog reference of our create to-do component. And this could also be undefined. And now we can work with it, and we can inject here in our constructor the met dialog from Angular material. And at the end, and when we implement it, we have to make sure that we also import the met dialog module into our private module. And now we can make here like a method to show a dialog, and we can say on show create to do dialog. And we can just use our reference here, so the create to do component dialog reference, and then here we want to use our net dialog, and we want to open it, and here we want to use our create to do component, and then we can give it some config properties, for example a min height of 400 pixels, and a min width also of 300 pixels maybe, and we can save it. And now, obviously we have to call this method. So for this we can just create, for example, a button in our component here. So we have our CDK, and then above our backlog, so above our items, we could make a new div. We could give it also a title, for example, just naming it actions. So maybe we want to add some more buttons later, for example, delete all items or whatever we want to do. So we can use Angular material button, and we also have to make sure here to import our net button module to our private module. So the IDE is doing it for us here, I think, but we have to check it at the end. We can use the primary color, and we want to have like a title create to do item for the button, and then we are just adding like a click handler. So if the user clicks on it, then we want to on show create to do dialog. And while we are talking and implementing this stuff, we can also fire up our Docker Compose so that we can have a look if it's actually working. So we can say Docker Compose up. And maybe to make it also a little bit nicer looking, between our divs where we have like all our to-do items and our buttons, we can add, for example, a net divider. And for this, we have to import the net divider module also. And here we can just give it a style, for example, of margin top to rem and margin bottom 3 rem. And now let's check in our private module if we are importing everything. So you see here this issue went away. So we have our drag and drop module. We have our net button module. We obviously need also the net dialog module. And let's see if this will work. So let's have a quick look at our where's our Angular stuff? just give it. And here we can see it's loading. And now let's just create a user, because I don't know if my user still exists. So we say test test.de, test, and create the user. Then we log in, test at test.de, test and test. Oops, I wanted to log in. And now you see we have here our actions. We have our create to do item button that opens our dialog here. So it seems a bit odd at the moment, but we can fix this. If I click outside, it closes. And here we have our backlog items that we created, or that are just like some example values at the moment. So this looks at the moment, I think, pretty nice. So we can like go on. So now we can go into our create to do component, and first we can create our form. So our form, we just need our form group. So we can say, for example, here we have our form, which is a form group. And this is our new form group. And then we can insert here some form controls. And what we can do now here also is we can make it like a typed form group. So we could go into our interfaces file and create there like a create to do form group. So we can go here and we can say export interface create to do form group. And then we name it like we want to have complexity. So it's like the same stuff that we're having here. We want to have a text. We want to have a subtitle, a title, and a status, or whatever. And now these are all form controls. And the type of this form control, for example, is our complexity type here, or null. And the same goes with the rest. So let's just copy and paste a bit to be faster. Obviously here for this is like a string. Same goes for subtitle and title. And our status is of course our status type here. So backlog to do or done. And now we can use this interface and reference this in for our form group here. So we can say here we have a form group of type create to do form group, and then we want to have a new form group of create to do form group. And now it says we are having here some issues because we are missing complexity, text, subtitle, title, and status. And so we can go now and say title is a new form control. The initial value is empty, and we can apply some Angular validators. For example, required. And then we can go on with this for our subtitle. Now you see it's telling me what's missing. And then we have here also our text that is missing. And our complexity is also a new form control. And now you see here, it's giving us our types or string literals that we defined in our interface. So it can be hard, medium, or easy, and we can say so the initial value for complexity should always be medium if the user is not changing it. And also here we want to have at least one value should be set. And then it says the last that's missing is the status form control. Oops. So here we also go for form control. Then we can say this is the initial value is, for example, it should always be assigned to our backlog, and it should also be required so that the form is invalid as soon as one of these values here is missing or is not having a value. So then we can make some getters for our form control. So we can say getters for form controls, just to make it a little bit easier to work with this stuff in our template, so in our HTML file. And here we can, for example, just say get title. We want to return a form control, and we can just say return this.form.get title as form control, and then we can do the same with the subtitle and with our text form control. So you see now we can work with these pretty easily, and we can now create our HTML. So we have our form, and we can bind it to our form group, and our form group is our form that we just defined in our component. And then we can say, if we click on our submit button, then we want to, for example, make it on create to do, that we can just implement here. And now we can add all our stuff. So first we might give it like a title. So to say create new to do item. And then we have a met form field. So don't forget to import the module. Here the IDE is doing it for us. So it's importing our met input module to our private module so that we can use this met form field. So our met form field inside we can use a label for our title, for example. We can say this is for our title field, or our field that or our input field that has the ID title. It's missing at the moment. So we make an input field and we give it an ID. You guess that it's title. We can use our met input directive, so the Angular material styling. We can also set a placeholder where we could say please enter a title. And of course we have to give it a form control name to bind it to a form control in our form group. So in this case we are binding it to our title form control. So this here is our form control in our form group that we bind it here to our form. So it is actually our title form control here. Then we can also say we want to display an error. For example, if our title, and here we are accessing our form control, and as soon as a user touches this field, this is being touched, or this touched value is true. And we can also check if the title is having an error. And here we can check for the required error if this is true. So basically here, this validator required adds like a required true value to our form control, or an error required true if this value is not having a value, so if it's empty or null. So if you just touch it and you don't have value in this form, then we can display this here. So ngIf this is touched and it is having an error to this form control that says we need it required. Then we can display, for example, title is required. And now this is basically the same stuff that we are doing also for our subtitle and our text. So let's do a bit copy and paste, and here it is subtitle, and we are binding it also to our form control named subtitle, and here we are accessing also the subtitle, and we say subtitle is required, and here we do the same with text. So now let's have a quick look how our form or how it works in our front end. So now you see if I click here, we have a form, and you see now it's touched, but it doesn't have a value, so we are displaying an error. If I type something, the error goes away, but the styling looks a bit odd. So to maybe make a quick fix, we can say to our form, we can say we want to have a display flex. We want to have a flex direction column. We can justify the content to our center, and we give the whole stuff a padding of 3 rem so that we don't clutch to the sides. And for all our form fields, we can say we should have a width of 100%, so the full width that is available, except the padding of 3 rem. And we could give it a min width of 300 pixels. And now let's have a look how it comes out. Oops, we have to reload. And now you see this looks way better and everything still works. So if I have nothing typed in here and it's touched, so I activated the field once and I went outside, so then it's touched and then it says we need a value here and have a value. Our label is there, so I think we are good to go on. So our next fields are not input fields, but like selects for our complexity and the status. So we are still using our met form field here. And we could also use our label, in this case complexity. And then we can just use a met select. Always import the met select module to our private module so that we can use it. And in our met select, we are binding this also to our form control name. In this case, it's complexity. So this here is our complexity form control. And now inside it, we have our met option. And here we want to iterate over it, so we make a for loop and we say let complexity of maybe complexity values. So this array we have to create, so there we need all values that we want to display in our select. And then we have to bind it to a value that it should return. So in our case, this could just be our single item C here. And then what we want to display to the user could be C. So also this single item here. And now we just have to create these items. And here we could just do this here in our component. So we can say complexity values. These are like a complexity array, and then this is just easy, medium, and hard. And now, since we're in the flow, we can just do the same for our status values. Here we are having our interface status, so we need an array, and then it's the same. So we have backlog, we have to do, and we have done. So now you see it here, we are using it here, so the complexity values. And now we can do the same that we are doing for the complexity. We can do for our status or status. So we say here the label is status, and we just call it status. And here we can say let s of status values, and then obviously we have to reference here s instead of c. So then we have like all values that we need. And then we could, like we do in our login form, for example, display a hint if our form is not valid. So if it's not valid, then we can say, please fill out all information correctly. And then at last, we do need a button. So we can make this inside a div. We can use, again, the Angular material button. The type here is submit. So then this will fire our onSubmit or endResubmit function that we defined here. If we click it, and we can disable the button if our form is not valid. So then you are not allowed to click it. And here we can just say create to-do item. And now we can show or look, and then this here should fire if we hit this button. So we want to say console.log this.form, and so this is how we access all the values in our form. So we can see if this will work. So let's go into our front end and let's open our developer tools. So everything goes right. So this is the stuff before. So now we have our form here. We enter a title, a subtitle, a text, and we can see here we have a complexity medium. We can set it to easy, backlog, and we can create to-do item. And now you see here we are in our works, and our object just says backlog. So let's see if we also can maybe close this here. But actually, maybe this is also something for the next video. So here we can also say you only want this to work if this.form is valid. Otherwise, we don't want to do anything. So here we can just say this. And now we can just think about what else we need to do or what else we can do. So for example, what I see here, maybe we can move these values here to a new file like constants or something, so that we don't have it in our component. Yeah, so maybe we can also rename our interfaces.ts file here to private module.interfaces.ts. So this will refactor all the imports also in our front end. And now we can make like another file, and we can say private module.constants.ts. And here, yeah, we could like remove our values from our component. So you remember here in our create to do component, we have created these two values or arrays. So we can move them here, and we can export both. So we have an export const. So maybe we want to use them also somewhere else later. So this makes it easier than having it defined in our component. And here we can just say it's the complexity values from our private module constants. And the same goes for our status values. So we can also reference it here. And I remember at our dashboard we are also having here some to-do items that we set up at the moment. So we could move these also to our constants file. So we could say here export const to do example items. And these are to do item array. And then we can just use them here in our dashboard component. So then this is also like a little bit shortened. So now let's see if still everything works. But this seems nice. So like beginning, at the start, everything gets printed out here. So our example values, we can open our form. We can create like a new to-do item. So like here, maybe later we can add like a scroll bar or something, but this is nothing special for now. So this works. We bring it to the console, and then in the next videos we can make a little bit more styling, a little bit, for example, closing. This component when we click here, and so on. So add or maybe also send it to our backend. So let's see what we can do in the next videos. So let's now have a quick look at our story now. So we wanted to have like a reactive form so that we can create to-do items. So this is obviously finished. We are logging the output of our form to our console. So we are doing this also. And our form is being opened in a dialog. So we have, I think, fulfilled all the criteria. And we can now commit like all the changes. And so this is like video 9. And we can say Angular create to do items with reactive form and inside dial or a mat dialog. And now we can push it.